it's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. And we begin here in Nigeria, where the 5 weeks lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory will be lifted at 9 a.m. today. Actually, it has been lifted today, and a nationwide curfew will take immediate effect from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for the next 2 weeks. However, Ogun has extended its lockdown till May 9 to make up for the 1-week grace granted by President Muhammadu Buhari to the state at the beginning of the first phase of a lockdown declared on March 30th. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control has confirmed 170 new cases of COVID-19. The agency made the announcement via its Twitter handle on Monday. At 12:01 a.m. on Monday, a total of 2,558 COVID-19 cases have now been confirmed in 34 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The number of discharged persons increased from 385 to 400, while the fatalities recorded rose from 85 to 87. A further breakdown of the case recorded on May 3rd, 2020 are 39 in Lagos, 29 in Kano, 24 in Ogun, 18 in Bauchi, 15 in Kaduna, 12 in the Federal Capital Territory, 12 in Sokoto, Katsina 8, Borno had 7 cases, while Nasarawa had 3, Adamawa recorded 2, and Oyo had 1 case. Well, Dr. Abatsi, the easing of the lockdown in Ogun and Lagos, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, was supposed to begin today. But as we have heard, Ogun had to make up for the 1-week extension granted by President Muhammadu Buhari. And the incident commander in Lagos, as well as the governor, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, gave his 10th address yesterday. We do realize that there were some adjustments to the initial guidelines issued, which he clarified yesterday. For instance, civil servants from levels 15 and above, initially it was for 13 and above. We also see that the eateries have been granted more time to operate till about 7 p.m., but still takeout only. But in all of that statement that he made yesterday, I think the major takeaway for me was when he said, you do not need to come out if you do not have a business coming out. That was the major takeaway for me yesterday.
Well, this morning, I left home quite early to come to the studio, and I try to be observant. I think that, in Lagos in particular, where the state governor has said that the state is going to set up a task force to enforce the guidelines, we would like to see how that task force, how it works in terms of enforcing the guidelines that have been put in place. Because it would seem to me that from what I saw this morning, that, people in Lagos are observing the guidelines more in the breach. Because some of the buses that I saw, those are the public transport, buses. What the governor had said is that, they shouldn't carry a certain number. They shouldn't
fill to capacity.
They shouldn't be filled to capacity, yes. But most of the buses that I saw, they were, in fact, filled to capacity. And I thought, okay, where is the social distancing that was advised? But, okay, we'll see how it goes, in terms of how those guidelines are enforced. But at the federal level, there have been some interesting developments over the weekend. The presidential task force that was sent to Kano to study the situation there and report back to the federal government, led by Dr. Nasir Gwazo, reported that most of the cases in Kano, they have been able to establish, have, something to do with COVID-19.
The death.
Yes. And that, even if the governor is insisting or any other person is insisting that there have been cases of hypertension and diabetes, but according to Dr. Gwazo, out of 10 cases, at least 8 of them, from the samples that have been tested so far in Kano, are related to COVID-19, which therefore means that the situation in Kano is a very serious one. And of course, he pointed out that the people of Kano, we need to take the COVID-19 situation in that state more seriously, which is why it's a bit curious that the governor of that same state had pushed for a relaxation of the lockdown, although he says he has a consent of the president. But I think that may have to be reviewed, because what is in place now is that I think on Mondays and Thursdays, persons are allowed to go out for about half of the day in Kano. What we're likely to see will be, a rise, a spike in the number of COVID-19 cases in that state. At the moment, Kano has the second highest number of 342 confirmed cases.
Indeed.
Then over the weekend, Chikwe Ihekwazu, the Director General of the Center for Disease Control, also made a number of revelations. Apart from announcing the new figures on the Twitter handle of the NCDC, he made it clear that Nigeria is now part of a global solidarity trial. About 100 countries are involved in that, and what WHO is trying to do is to try a number of drugs, hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine phosphate, and remdesivir.
Yes. The
third one, Ihekweazu says, Nigeria is trying to adopt it for treatment, but that it will still need to go through certain processes, regulatory processes, particularly by NAFDAC, and that he hopes that NAFDAC will fast-track, the regulatory approval that they may need.
Indeed, the antiviral drug remdesivir has showed promising signs, and the U.S. is ramping up productions already. But Dr. Batsey, when we come back to the easing of the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and Federal Capital Territory, there have been controversies as to whether this is the right time to do so. Is it premature? Have we actually recorded gains in the 5-week lockdown, or 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, in whichever case you look at it, because Ogun still has 1-week extension and Lagos was on a partial lockdown before the president then issued his the nationwide lockdown for those 3 states. But Dr. Ihekweazu also made mention that the primary objectives have been achieved, but nobody promised that the cases will not increase. Where do you stand in this debate? Was it premature? Is it right to ease those lockdowns today and commence the curfew?
Well, I've always argued for a very cautious approach, and I think that, if you look at the example from other jurisdictions, countries wait till the curve has been flattened or until it flattens, and, they try to be very careful. If what we have seen in Germany, when Germany is the lockdown, the number of cases, COVID-19 cases spiked. The same thing has happened in the state of Georgia, in the United States, where the governor, Brian Kemp, insisted, I guess in response to the protests across over 40 American cities, that the lockdown is counterproductive. But also there, the cases spiked.
Yes.
Now, in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is trying to be cautious. He was supposed to announce an exit strategy since last week. Now he has pushed it further till the end of the week. And what does he say? He says he wants to study the data to be sure that is the right decision that the United Kingdom will take. Now here in Nigeria, our decision, is it data-driven? I don't think so. Is it emotion-driven? Perhaps. But we'll see how it works out, because the federal government says it's going to be gradual and phased. So maybe perhaps after 2 weeks of relaxing the lockdown, if the numbers continue to go up, then the government may have no option but to reverse itself, as the National Allied Body of Health Professionals called for yesterday.
Indeed. Let's take a break. We'll be back on the Morning Show to talk some more on those news headlines making the front pages globally. Join us again. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News, and to another news making the headlines. The Coalition Against COVID-19 has started their food distribution efforts, partnering up with a Lagos-based bakery owner. Kakovid have handed out 5,000 loaves of bread to those in need, and the Arise correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya was on ground at 3 of their distribution centers, where she sent in this report.
For the Coalition Against COVID-19, the journey to feed millions of people started with a loaf of bread. 5,000 of them were given out across 3 distribution centres on day 1. The donations began in Tinubu Square on Lagos Island, where men, women and children were able to benefit.
I would like to appreciate those people that gave us this bread. You understand? We thank them, we appreciate them. And those who have been giving, we know we are many, and this thing cannot be enough for us, but we really appreciate them.
We travelled a short distance to Lekki, where another Kakovid bread distribution centre has been set up to attend to a bigger crowd of people.
Well, even in the pouring rain, Kakovid say they are dedicated to making sure food resources reach the people who need them regardless of weather. We are here at the new market space in the Oniru area, where Kakovid bread is being shared out to people who need them.
Kakovid joined forces with Abisola Dejomo-Tokan, the owner of Dejabi's, a bakery which specialises in butter-rich bread.
I started this initiative a little over a week ago, and COVID decided to support us by sponsoring the initiative of giving and helping relieve the hunger situation going on in the country as a result of the COVID-19 that's around. And so far, so good. It's been good. Today's the first day with COVID sponsoring us.
Within minutes of finishing up in Oniru, more cars loaded with bread reach Muri Okunla Park in Victoria Island, where once again a group of the hungry and homeless gather within seconds.
I've been having accommodation problem for the past 6 years. I've been homeless, jobless, no money to feed. I stay here at Muri Okunla Park outside the gate, day and night, and things have been very difficult for me. No source of income, no investment, no nothing. Especially with the poor people that are fighting for daily survival. It has been terrible with us. But we thank God the Almighty that we still have good Nigerians that are coming out to help us with food and drinks, also bread.
This bread outreach is expected to last for 2 weeks. In the meantime, bigger food relief packages are on the way as Kakobid continue its journey to reach 1.7 million households struggling to survive economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria. Adefemi Akinsanya, Arise News, Lagos.
Fantastic. Well, joining us now is business correspondent Roches Oduri. Hello, Roches.
Morning, Dr. Abasi. How are you doing? So the business community is talking about a circular that was released by the central bank over the weekend. They had a special meeting on the 2nd, which was on Saturday, with the Bankers Committee, and they said they are suspending layoffs in the banking sector. The meeting focused on the increasing operational costs for the banks as a result, of course, of the impact of what's been going on with COVID-19. But they also talked about the adverse impacts of layoffs on the livelihoods of Nigerians. So it's divided opinion. On the one hand, you've got an increase in unemployment, even though we haven't received unemployment figures since Q3 of 2018. We do know that, a number of Nigerians are breadwinners and they're putting food on the table for their families. As a result of the layoffs and salary cuts, the ability for them to put food on the table for their families has been impacted. So for many people, they feel that what the Bankers Committee, the decision that has been made, which, by the way, was that there shall be no layoffs for now in the banking sector. And if there are to be any layoffs, there has to be express permission that is received from the central bank in order for these layoffs to be carried out. But many would feel that the regulator should be allowed to step in here and try to save the average Nigerian from being able to not being laid off so that they continue to provide for their families. So that's one argument. On the other side, folks who say that while the average Nigerian should be protected by the Bankers Committee and the central bank, the regulator in the financial sector, what about businesses? Businesses also have costs that they have to control. And should the regulator be allowed to dictate to private sector players whether they should, be able to authorize layoffs or not? Because, the banks will tell you that cash reserve ratio has increased from 22.5% to 27.5%. The loan deposit ratio has also increased as well. So there's a lot of cash that's being constricted, and they're also being pushed to lend more. There's the risk of non-performing loans increasing because a lot of people who have suffered salary cuts or layoffs will not be able to service their loans. And also in other climes, Arise News has consistently carried live broadcasts from the US and the UK, where governments there have been providing, literally giving cash to citizens who have been affected by layoffs. So, considering that, that's where the division of opinion is, whether the regulator can do it to save the average worker or if they should be, dictating this to private sector players. But still, for now, if you're in the financial sector and you're at the threat of a layoff, you can breathe at this moment. So that's what's going on.
Some sort of reprieve. But do you see us carrying out stress tests for these banks when COVID is over?
Yeah, stress tests, I mean, are carried out regularly by the regulator, and considering where the environment is right now with increased costs, that's going to be something that's going to be looked at. The Fitch, Moody's, S&P, they've already looked at the banking sector. I believe the most recent one was Fitch or Moody's that had a negative outlook for banks, saying that increase in non-performing loans is going to be a possible threat, as well as some other factors. So that's going to be, the health of the sector is going to be looked at, but the regulator is on top of things.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure whether the regulator is on top of it. The two arguments that you presented, both are valid, and I was hoping that, you know, at that particular meeting, part of the outcome will talk about, you know, how the regulator can, in fact, make life easier for the banks, because at the moment, before coronavirus, the major challenge that the banking sector had was, you know, the threat of overregulation. But since then, we've had coronavirus, we've had, you know, fluctuations in oil prices, we have had, you know, the economic crisis that the country faces, the devaluation of the naira.
Right.
And many of these banks, they are heavily exposed to the oil and gas sector. They are heavily exposed to the power companies. And, you know, they are facing, cost of capital is going up. You know, they are facing the threat of capital erosion. Even microfinance banks, with this coronavirus, they've not been able to access loans that they've given out, up to the tune, according to one report, of about 42 billion naira. So what is the, you know, the regulator, the CBN in this case, what will it do, you know, to help these banks? Because we may face a situation whereby many of these banks will go under if this economic crisis continues, say, for up to about 6 months, because, you know, because of their overexposure in many regards. So if we now have a financial crisis added to this health crisis, then, of course, it will be a, you know, a triple whammy for the banking sector.
But of course, the central bank has promised, though, I mean, that they are there to protect the financial sector if a crisis comes out. So yes, that is a valid point. But you know,
only a week ago or so, they took 1.47 trillion from the banks, squeezing them further. Right. Is this the right time to take such a step?
Valid question.
Well, anyway, thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
We're going to a quick break. When we return, we'll have updates on the global pandemic with Aaron Akarijala. Join us again. Welcome back. Aaron Akarijala joins us now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic. Hello, Aaron.
Yeah, good morning to you, Adesua. Good morning, Doctor. Let's dive into the numbers this morning. And looking at the global numbers for the COVID-19 cases, the U.S. still leads with the number of confirmed cases with 1,158,041. Going second, Spain, Italy, United Kingdom. But let's actually focus on Africa and look at the numbers that are actually coming in from Africa, which is quite disturbing, understanding that as it still stands right now, South Africa still, as the several African countries actually trying to ease the lockdown, all right, the numbers are not abating by any means. All right, South Africa is still leading with 6,783 confirmed cases, with Egypt coming in second, then Morocco third, then Algeria with 4,474 cases, and Nigeria has overtaken Ghana over the course of the weekend as the fifth largest number of cases confirmed in Africa, with about 2,558, with Ghana with 2,169. So you actually look at that and you say that right now, 44,483 cases confirmed in Africa in total, 1,801 deaths, 14,921 recoveries. It's not looking good for Nigeria right now. We said at some point Nigeria would overtake Ghana now. We've overtaken Ghana and the cases just keep rising.
You know, there's been concerns expressed globally, including in Africa, about how you balance the acts of public health safety and the economy, especially for African countries who are already struggling with their economies before the global pandemic. Having to lock down for such a long time is biting hard on the economy, but then you have to balance protection of lives. I think it's a difficult situation for any government. It's a difficult decision to make.
Well, most certainly, yes. But I guess, you know, as we go along, countries will learn their own lessons. And as I've always said, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from the example, from the situation in other countries. Yes, the major challenge that African countries have is the fragility of their healthcare system. And if you look at a country like South Africa, which even has, a stronger healthcare system, and you see the numbers just rising every day, then you know, of course, that we're dealing with, a phenomenon, a pandemic that stretches the capacity of countries and the relevant institutions that they have. And, of course, before you joined us, we were also focusing on the situation in Nigeria this morning. And I had expressed concern about the fact that there has to be enforcement of the guidelines. I mean, I didn't see too many people on the road, although it was early morning, using face masks, for example. And the Nigerian government had said face mask plus social distancing plus personal hygiene, would help in this situation. But I didn't see too many people using face mask. I didn't see any evidence
and there were a lot of
social distancing.
There were a lot of clusters on the road when I was coming in this morning.
I saw them too.
And it was really disturbing.
And all the buses were full, and we may be dealing with not just this balance between business and livelihood.
Yes.
We may be dealing with a serious crisis.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's so much we can take. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.